We've had a couple of questions, and as I've said earlier, we'd also like people to feel able to make contributions about their experience in addition to asking questions. But the first question is from Megan Bick. Megan, would you like to ask your question?
So I was just wanting to know if the changes in civil society, quite positive ones that Anastasiia mentioned about organizations coming together, people believing that small and local actions can really make a difference, if that has been similar in Odessa and Fergana, and if Kristina or Birodar could answer that.
I can say that before the pandemic, in Fergana we had several organizations working with women and socially vulnerable groups, and we had about 20 such NGOs. They worked with their target group. We were like in silos, I would say, in our ivory towers. But when pandemic erupted, we saw that it was one of our vulnerabilities, because non-governmental, non-commercial organizations do not have large budgets, they do not have large human resources or financial resources, and we have to come together and to actually bring our resources together. That's exactly what we did. We have a united Telegram channel group, and we share experiences, we share expertise, and if people, potential beneficiaries, come to us and we were not able to provide assistance, then we would be referring them to a peer NGO. So we had lots of responses, and I here agree with Anastasiia.
Okay, thank you very much. And Kristina?
Я хочу сказать, что мы с нашими партнерами...
Yes, we have been cooperating with partners since 2019. We have got an MOU, and we agreed to cooperate and coordinate our activities. So organizations who work with Roma communities, particularly would know that we deal with Roma women, so they will refer Roma women to us. When I was presenting our organization, I tried to show our results and some positive features, but we did face certain difficulties that we had to overcome. I work with a very specific target group, and when I see other organizations were working online, I understand that my target audience does not have capacity to go online. Their children cannot study online because they haven't got all of those gadgets. So I had to come to the office, and we are in the yellow zone, not in the red zone. We are not under lockdown, and I can have up to 5 women in my office according to the sanitary requirements. And if I know that this group of women need legal aid, then I would invite the attorney who would provide those consultations. And we had to arrange more meetings with smaller groups. So we had to adjust to the activities, but we have cooperated with our partners from the very start. And when we conducted the IT courses, our libraries, including the academic library, they provided a whole room with computers, and our beneficiaries could go there and get trained there. But when lockdown occurred or was announced, it was a challenge, of course. Some women could go to libraries and use their computers. Others could come to the office and use my computer. But that was a huge obstacle, of course. So it was very difficult to cut our groups, right? Have one, instead of one group for 15 trainees, have three groups of 5 trainees. So thus our loading increased threefold. But we didn't have any difficulty with partners. We had an MOU, and it actually disciplines you to cooperate better and to coordinate your activities better.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have a question from Robert Brinkley. Question for Anastasiia, I think. Robert, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. First of all, let me thank all the speakers for their presentations and telling us how they've been able to cope with the pandemic this year. Some very impressive stuff in terms of networking, bringing together the activities of different organizations, as well as using what technology makes available. In Kyrgyzstan this year, Anastasiia, you've had to face not only the pandemic, but an upheaval which led to, I think it was unexpected change of government. So you've had these 2 crises going on. Could you tell us how that has affected and impacted the work of your organization?
Thank you.
Спасибо большое за вопрос.
Thank you very much for this question. Yes, indeed. During the pandemic, the government failed to respond effectively. As a result, people had to shoulder the responsibility and address certain challenges, particularly immediate issues, like lack of medicines or lack of PPEs. And that's when young people stepped in, raised funds, and measured or gauged needs. And people were very disillusioned, and they got angry. Then parliamentary elections were held, and as a result, people were again dissatisfied with the vote rigging. They started rallying, and unfortunately, when people were standing up for their right for free and fair elections, the results were very contradictory. And now we've got a person who is an acting president, and we hope that presidential elections would be held in early January. But the situation is very unstable now because many actors would be pushing for the amendments in the constitution. We do not quite trust that into the integrity of powers that be, and we understand that another rally can take place. We anticipated their situation. We knew about the elections, and we knew that some people might be dissatisfied, and thus we had to rearrange our activities. We now invite young people to get trained for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, as young leaders, and we are now meeting online. We had lots of concerns that young people from smaller villages would have problems with internet connection, with electricity costs, etc. But now we see that we have sorted that out. And on a monthly basis, we meet with the target groups. So we do not rely on powers that be on the government. For 15 years, we've been working on our own. We showed initiative, and we were supported by like-minded donor organizations and active citizens. the government actually supported us when we actually initiated some public meetings, and they would contribute with presentations, but not with anything tangible. We remain convinced that our idea is a winning idea, and we will be able to mobilize younger people in the future. We want to develop partnerships, including with the government and with governmental agencies. We hope that eventually we will elect decent people and they will be open to this partnership as well. Today, there are a lot of new parties, alternative parties. I think they understand what common sense is about, and we hope that everything will be okay.
Thank you very much. And I have a question for all of the speakers. You've all talked in very interesting ways about lots of different sorts of changes that you've made. Most of those changes seem to be have advantages, some have disadvantages. So I wondered, which would you say are the changes you've made that will survive the pandemic, that will change the ways you work even after the pandemic has either subsided or we've all had vaccines? So can I take Kristina first?
Все, что мы делали в рамках проекта.
Whatever we did within this project, even this quest map will survive the pandemic, and young women and other Roma women will be able to use it after the pandemic. It contains all the data, all the contact information by regions of the country, and every Roma woman will be able to have their concerns addressed. They will be able to get legal aid, psychological counseling. They will be able to get IDs, because many of them are undocumented. They don't have IDs or their tax numbers. They don't know where to go and who to speak about it. So they will be using them after the pandemics. And all of the skills that they've gained thanks to our courses and our vocational training will be with them, will stay with them after the pandemic. So it's sustainable, I hope. And we do our best to support our target audience. But we all are tired of the lockdowns, of quarantine restrictions. And now I particularly feel pity for the kids that stay at homes and study online. I'm glad that when I was a school child, I could go to school and meet my peers there and play with them, because online, as Anastasiia said, is not a substitution for face-to-face live communication. Thank you.
Anastasiia, would you like to add anything?
Да, спасибо большое. На самом
Yes,
деле,
of course. Indeed, we would be using new ITs, new methodologies to develop new skills, not only with young people, but we will invite young people to train their grandmothers and grandfathers, the older generations, because we see that young people are very dynamic, very flexible and agile. They use internet, they use mobile gadgets, but older generation are deprived of those skills, and we want to encourage young people who could be trainers for the older people, thus learning some skills from the older generation. I think that intergenerational exchange will be very useful. Once our young people can visit the older people after the quarantine. We also plan to develop our international relations. Over the 15 years, we worked with more than 400 volunteers from other countries of the world. They came, they shared their expertise and their skills, and I hope that next year we will be able to meet with them physically.
Thank you. That's great. I like the idea of the grandparents teaching the young ones. Birodar, how about you? What would you like to say about this?
Отвечая на ваш вопрос.
Just answering your question, about the skills that will survive the pandemic, we have to rethink a lot of our activities during the pandemic. Of course, we transferred our context with the target groups online. And today we understand that a legal aid, some legal counseling can remain online. It is more effective that way. But psychological counseling works better when people meet face to face, looking into the counselor's eyes. Body language matters, a lot matters when it is about mental health and psychological well-being. So I hope that after the pandemic, we will go back alive. So as for the business counseling, some types of this counseling that is in demand, like cooking or sewing, that can be done online. But when you need some hands-on experience, like using sewing machines, for example, you cannot do that online. So we will have to get back to our workshops. As for our interaction with partner organizations, it will be both online and offline. No hindrances there whatsoever. The only thing that I would like to mention, since we narrowed our activities and areas of activities are fewer than they used to be, it will take some time to return to the previous areas. And I'm not sure that we will be able to re-recruit new human resources, to find new experts to work with us once we expand our activities. And many donors in Uzbekistan work via governmental agencies, and they would rather fund governmental programs than NGOs initiatives. So we can't see this attention on their part. Whether it will return to us after the pandemic, it's hard to say.
Thank you. Anne Lewis, you have a question. Would you like to ask it?
Kristina referred to the fact that her Roma clients don't have IT, so they can't work online. I was wondering whether there are other places in your countries where this is a problem, either in terms of the equipment that people have or in availability of broadband, and whether perhaps this might be a particular problem in very remote rural areas, thereby making them even more disadvantaged than they were already.
Kristina.
Хочу сказать то, что
I can add that we have good access to broadband internet. It covers the entire territory of the country in Odessa and Odessa region. South of the country, we haven't got problems with that whatsoever. The problem is the equipment, because people come and say that they can't afford buying, for example, a smartphone or a laptop, or if they have one smartphone for the family and they've got 2 or 3 children going to different grades of studies, and if she needs to attend our online trainings, then it's a dilemma, who has the priority, right? So she will perhaps opt for the child in the final class of his school to have access to studies. So we are looking now for sponsors, and we apply to the Rotary Club to get some assistance, and they I think are almost ready to provide assistance. And our partners face similar problems when they work with Roma communities. That's the major, equipment is the major problem.
Anastasiia.
Анастасия.
Да, спасибо. Действительно, в разных
you.
социальных...
Indeed, various social groups have different needs, and in rural areas, when lockdown was announced, school children had to stay at home, and some TV programs were broadcast for them. But not even every family had a TV set in their households. So then the Ministry of Education decided that teachers and school children would communicate via telephone. So they would get their tasks and they would complete them, and they would send them back to their teachers. So we face similar problems. And some older teachers couldn't even use gadgets because it was a totally new skill to them. And there are some vulnerable groups of the population, mostly women in rural areas, who haven't got such skills. And in rural families, domestic violence is on the rise. And we should remember that they are not employed and they cannot provide for themselves, let alone their families. A lot of NGOs try to support them, providing legal aid and certain counseling, but they also try to develop some survival skills in them. Since our region is a tourist attraction, we've got a Japanese project in our region, and it supported almost every village in just they have women say make jams, for example, and then they will be selling that jam, or making some crafts, arts and crafts, and just they market those crafts later. So thus women can earn their living. We are looking for some alternative ways to support our target populations. Thank you.
Thank you. Birodar, would you like to say anything about this?
Спасибо, Ан, за вопрос.
Thank you, Anne, for your question. Yeah, a most topical issue. In Uzbekistan, children also attend TV classes. Twice a day, TV classes would be broadcast, either in the morning or in the afternoon. And as for the availability of gadgets and other equipment, we've observed the following. Amongst the socially vulnerable groups, some have smartphones, of course, and they can work online with smartphones, perhaps not of the latest model or the latest make. But in the Fergana Valley, it seems okay, and internet is available. But in the mountainous areas, Wi-Fi is almost unavailable. So, and even connection land or not satellite by terrestrial or just connection is not possible. So I'm not a physicist, I don't know how it works, but I understand that mountains are an obstacle for Wi-Fi waves. And we didn't study that in detail, but partner organizations that work in other regions in mountainous areas, they complain about this issue, and they work with mayor's offices, with governor's offices to look for possibilities to conduct offline classes for school children with all of the social distancing requirements in place. So that they are not dropped out of the entire academic process. So, but as Kristina said, having no access to gadgets or equipment, we don't find this problem, in fact. We do have such a group of women, like Roma in Ukraine. We call them Luli. Luli communities in, they are nomads as well as Romas elsewhere. But I cannot tell you anything about their situation because it is a very closed community and they live in certain areas, but it's almost impossible to get there, to get in. They do not welcome aliens or strangers. So the community is very closed.
Thank you very much. I think we've run out of time. There were a couple more questions, but I think that we have probably reached the end of our session. So I'm going to wind up. I first of all want to thank everybody who's taken part today, and in particular our speakers who've made such very interesting and stimulating contributions, and also to thank Irina, our excellent interpreter. Louisa is going to email everybody who's attended all three of the webinars to ask for feedback. We are particularly interested to know, not just have you enjoyed them, these webinars, have you found them interesting, but would you like us to organize more of these sorts of discussions? So there will be emails coming to you, and we'd be grateful if you could spend a few minutes sending us your responses. It just remains for me to wish all of you and all your projects and programs success, and to say that we hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.
До свидания.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.